Okay. You are live. Awesome. Cool.
Nice.
Hey, Suzanne, we're live.
Awesome. I see a red box. It says live, so looks live to me.
Yes, we're ready to roll. All right. So, um, welcome. We have sort of, I put together, I have a bunch of notes here with an agenda. I told you I
Post it.
need to have, yes, I need to have an agenda. And typically I write these on a post-it or a bunch of post-its. So I thought what we would start with is doing a little bit of catch up, because this is the first time the School of Innovation has put out anything in 2021. This is the first piece of content in 2021. Okay, and I'm thinking,
Milestone.
yes, definitely. And I'm thinking maybe people are like wondering what the fuck happened. And where have you been? Where have we been? Where has the school been since 31st of December 2020, which was the last episode of the podcast? So there's not much like drama or like no drum roll or anything like that. Nothing sensational to share. It's just we took a break. That's the honest truth. We took a break, which, as breaks usually kind of behave, is that they start, short and end up long. So break is a nice thing, and then it becomes a habit, and then all of a sudden you realize that shit, 4 months have gone by and you're still on a break. So that's what happened. We took a break. The idea was actually to revamp some of the content, to think about like how can we push the School of Innovation beyond just the podcast. That was really the impetus for the break. And so we're back. We took a break. Now we're back. That's the first thing that people, I think, were wondering about. The second thing is kind of big news is I'm not alone. You're here. Ta-da! Yes, and it's fun. It's better together. It's better to do this with you and not on my own. And so thank you. And you'll be here more, I should say, just more, right? And people will
just
not
the
just
video broke up. I'm back, but the video broke on my side. See, this is what happens. The moment I want to say something, the internet's like, oh no. Is this going to be a bad joke? Let's just cut this off right before it starts. Anyway, I'm back. I'm hearing you again.
Okay. What did you want to say?
I wanted to say, yay, we're here. And I wanted to make a comment on break, because I just rewatched Friends. To be honest, watched Friends for the first time. You know, the TV series with the friends in New York.
Yes, I remember that.
And like the main thing at some point is that Ross goes, but we were on a break. We were on a break. So, it's just the definition of break. It's a good thing that you pointed out like what break meant in this context, and let people know that, we were not secretly doing other things. But it was a break.
Exactly.
So, the end.
We took a break. We're back. And it's even better now because it's just not just me. It's you as well. So our audience has gotten 2 innovation professionals for the price of 1, and so I think that's a big win. So that's the second thing. Sorry, and the third thing is so there's sort of a change of format that we've been working on. So we kind of decided we're not going to go off and record podcast episodes on our own. I think that's kind of everyone's doing it, and it's kind of boring. And also, I think something that's much more aligned with what a school is, or what I'm thinking about as a new school, is that learning should be much more open, much more transparent, much more collaborative. So the recordings that we're going to do are either going to be live stream like this, or they're going to be open. Like we all get on a Zoom call, right? If I were recording, like when you and I recorded your podcast episode, we got on a Zoom call or a Zencastr call, doesn't really matter, and we just talked. Now what we want to do is kind of open that conversation up and invite other people to join as listeners. So it's kind of an open forum. And the two recordings or the two events that we have coming up are one on the 19th, and we'll share. So this is a good time to bring in the banner, I think.
Oh,
Ta-da!
look at this! Look
Yes.
at this! Look at
We have a
this.
banner.
Whoa.
Right. So if you want to follow us, join us, keep up with what we're doing, be part of this, whatever, this is the starting point. Just follow this link. There's a place there to join the newsletter, follow the podcast. There's a YouTube channel now. There's a website coming up. So all of that good stuff. Okay. And if you join the newsletter, you're going to get a link to an open Google Calendar. Okay. And on that calendar, we're going to put all the events with registration information. So you can sign up and join whatever calls, whatever recordings, just be part of the live experience. So that's, I think, pretty cool. The two events that I was going to mention that are coming up is with Scott Anthony from Innosight, which is he's based in Singapore, which you're familiar with very well. Mm-hmm. And he has written a book called Eat, Sleep, Innovate, and we're going to talk about that. So there's a link on the public Google Calendar. Sign up to the newsletter, get that link, come join the event. The second event is with Jenny Wu and Roland Osborne from 500 Startups. And we're going to talk about, I think we called it 10 tips for running successful POCs with startups. So if you're want to run POCs, proof of concepts with startups as a corporate, 500 Startups have done hundreds, if not thousands of these. And Jenny and Roland will talk about that. And also a paper that they wrote, a research paper that they put out on the subject, which is pretty cool. I read it. So those are coming up. That's going to be on the 20th. That's it. That's in terms of catching up. Okay. That was kind of long. I apologize, but I needed to get all of that off my chest. So we're done with the first.
Okay. First post-it. Cool.
Done.
Done and dusted.
Okay, so moving on to why we have gathered here today, ladies and gentlemen. What are we talking about?
In the
Suzanne, what do we want to talk about today? The School of Innovation.
Well, what I would love to talk about is, starting at the basics, first time back online, School of Innovation. So I was thinking, let's start at what is a basic thing, what's a basic element of innovation, of corporate innovation, which is the innovation methodologies that underpin a lot of stuff that's going on. And so I'm part of ING Bank, financial institution. We have a methodology in-house. It's called PACE. But of course, you have seen all kinds of things all over the world. So I thought it would be cool to discuss, what kind of innovation methodologies have we seen? And then more practically, also, how do you start doing it, actually? How do you start bringing it to life? And for me specifically, I have worked with startups as well, and in an innovation lab, which looks quite different to implement an innovation methodology versus a corporate environment where people have their day-to-day execution-driven. And if you then want to introduce an innovation, and
hold on, Suzanne. I think we lost you.
Am I back?
You're back. You're back. What's up with the internet?
I don't know.
You ran out of internet.
I think the internet was saying, that's too much interneting for you today. You're done. So let's see how we go. Otherwise, I'll swap to my phone hotspot situation. It's still figuring out what was the best configuration. But I hope that most of it made it all the way to you.
Okay. Well, some of it, not all of it. We're going to talk about innovation methodologies, going back to the basics, and how to implement those, like how to get started, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about PACE. Let's start with PACE. What is it? I'm going to assume it's an acronym.
It's not
something?
actually.
It's not an
No,
acronym.
well, it's not. But we came up with why it could be an acronym. So officially, so the marketing people, they were like, PACE, and we were all like, cool. What does it mean? No, it's just PACE. So of course we got a bit creative, and I think there was some kind of unofficial contest who got the best acronym for it. And I think what we sort of agreed on was performing awesome customer experience. I think that was sort of the one I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. But my personal favorite was people are clueless every day, which is again not the official acronym at all. But I liked it. I thought it was pretty funny. Also because in innovation, a lot of people have an idea on what innovation means. Often it's like, oh yeah, Post-its and getting creative and energy, hoodies. Where ultimately for me, it's really about gathering evidence, making sure that you have data-driven decision-making, and that you know that you're de-risking a solution that you can ultimately implement, rather than just having lots of Post-its on the wall and an energetic workshop and then nothing happened. So I thought it was an interesting angle. But yeah, PACE, it's a combination of market practices that were put together in a certain way that it makes sense for this corporate environment that we are in. So we took things from design thinking, lean startup, and agile scrum. We put them in a blender, called it PACE. So we have both the components separately, where for me, design thinking is really all about working your empathy muscle, really stepping into the shoes of your customer, trying to really understand from their perspective what is the problem that needs to be solved and what does it look like, feel like, smell like, where then Lean Startup really complements it by doing the rapid prototyping, by learning fast, by building things small rather than waterfall style, building something only to learn that it really doesn't work. And Agile Scrum really provides the cadence and the structure and making sure that the engine keeps going. It also really, it's just so complementary in terms of making sure that we focus on the right things on the backlog, making sure that we don't build things too heavy, also making sure that we as a team don't overcomplicate what we're actually trying to deliver. So those are the sort of components we took, and we also actually put them in a sort of process. Although innovation processes are always more fluid than what they look like on paper. So in general, the process starts with what we call discovery. So really just trying to understand the scope, trying to understand what is the problem that we're looking at. Do we already have a sense of which direction we want to go? Just getting the status quo of the project sorted. Then once we feel confident enough that there's a vision, that there's a market, that there's a problem to be solved, we move to the next phase to actually go deeper and zoom into that problem. And we call this problem fit. This is where we have all the customer interviews to really go a layer deeper to understand how big is this really, and do we have examples of this? And then we move on to solution fit once we feel confident enough that we have a problem to solve here. And in solution fit, that's when we start to build our first prototypes. That's where we're starting to build maybe even the first wireframes to understand, hey, is this what you are looking for? To actually then run those experiments to get closer and closer to finding what actually moves the needle in a positive way for who we've identified as a customer. And then based on, again, this is the happy flow, right? We're just assuming here that everything is, problem defined, solution ticks all the boxes. And then tick, 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 tick. And then it's really depending on where will this project land? Is this going to be an internal initiative to be just implemented, or is this something we're going to put out in the market? Where it really then depends on if it's going internally, like how do we make sure that it's implemented? How do we make sure that the right people have it on the backlog to actually scale this up and make it, put it in production? Whereas if it's, so in Innovation Labs, we work with startups, and that's where we then look at, okay, how can we now scale this up? How do we build the MVP to the next level? How do we make sure that the business model is scalable to beyond just the initial customers that we've identified? So that is sort of high level, the sort of the buffet of PACE tools plus the a la carte menu in terms of structure, how you can apply these.
Yeah. So
So
that's it. Okay. So I wrote down discovery, problem fit, solution fit, and what's the?
So it's either implementation, or it is like MVP or scaling. We call it scaling.
Scaling. Okay. Scaling.
Sort of like you have like this two different roads you can take depending on what problem you're solving and for who.
Yeah. So this is interesting. I think just on that we can talk like for a couple of hours now, because I want to point out a couple of interesting things. One is it's kind of like it's a bit meta, but it's like you've innovated on the innovation. You've been creative with the innovation process, right? You took 3 methodologies: design thinking, lean startup, and Scrum, and you extracted, or you're using the best of each, right? You kind of they're not competing, they're complementing each other, and that's really interesting, because I think so a lot of people might get really pissed off at me right now, but I think that methodologies are a piece of crap. I think people are too obsessed with methodologies, just like they're too obsessed with widgets or gadgets or material things. It's like a tool, right? And I understand why that happens, right? These methodologies give us a sense of comfort, right? When you're trying to do something that's risky, as you do in innovation, you want to get a sense of security, right? That if I follow this methodology, this process, I'm going to achieve this result, right? And it gives you a sense of comfort, security. I think it's a false sense of security, and that's what a lot of people don't understand. By obsessing on the methodology, you're missing out on, and you said this, the fluidity of the process. Okay, the fluidity of the process. The process is it doesn't matter if it's linear or not linear or blah blah blah, whatever. It's never pretty. It never works as expected, and too many people today, I think, and I'll stop my rant there, are focused on the methodology. Like, I ran a design sprint, I did blah, 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 right? And you can even see this obsession in like the number of iterations that a certain methodology gets, right? Like design sprints. There was one, right? And then someone came up, Adrian Smart came up with 2.0, and then someone else in Europe came up with 3.0, and someone else is going to come up with 4.0. And so, like, what's the design sprint N? When N represents, right, kind of this modular approach, as you said, and I totally agree, to all these methodologies, where you can mess them up, you can break them up, you can mix and match. And I think that's the brilliant part in what you guys have done by taking these methodologies and extracting the best of each one and using what works for you. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's like you said, right? It's really a means to an end. It's
yes,
you're trying to drive a certain outcome. And having spent a lot of time as a coach for teams, for individuals, for startups, it's all about. It's not about I have these tools. Which one do you want? It's really about, hey, what is currently in your way? What is blocking you at the moment to move forward? What does forward look like? And based on what they then share, you're like, all right, let me now have a look in the toolkit and see what can actually support you. Because in some cases, if the team already has a really clear sense of this is our customer, this is what they want, we know because we have reason, we have so much data. However, we're really struggling to move, like somehow our operational system is not working, we're miscommunicating, then it doesn't make sense to break out a persona canvas. It makes more sense to sit down with them and see, hey, how can a good Kanban board actually help you now make sure that you prioritize the right things and that you as a team work better together. So it's, for me, really more about the why behind it. And I think this is also something we've seen in the last few years, where a lot of organizations have gone on these transformation journeys, where there's Coach Takeshi. He said, well, there's a lot of people that do agile with a small a, whereas it's really about being agile with a capital A. So it's really more about understanding the why behind it. Like, why would you want to transform? What is the dot on the horizon you're trying to get to? And then see, how do these tools, these ways of working, these meeting structures actually help us get there, rather than the other way around. If you just start filling out all the tools, or you just start doing all the ceremonies, only to realize that, well, you're now just doing more work, but nothing is actually getting done. So really, for me, but it goes back to, is like, what's the purpose? Like, what are we trying to accomplish? Why are we doing this in the first place? And based on that, see, okay, now what would make sense to move forward? And what you were saying in terms of the, you want to hold on to something, especially if it's someone who's doing an innovation process for the first time, or who's joining an innovation thing for the first time. It's like, okay, and then what's going to be next? And what's going to be next? And you sort of want to have that whole perspective. And I know this because I was these people. It's really,
we all were.
Yeah, but also like, I remember going to innovation coach training, and they wouldn't exactly tell me what the whole agenda was for the whole day, and I was like, I'm sorry, how do you not know exactly when we're going to be doing what? But I felt it afterwards, reflecting back on that, it just shows how much we long for structure, how much we long to know what's going to happen next, and that's just inherent to every innovation project ever. It's like, you need to follow the evidence. And that's the sort of vulnerability. And on the other side, also the sense of freedom. Once you have embraced that, you're going to follow the evidence. You're going to follow the data. It doesn't all rest on you. It's really going to be in the data. I interrupted you. Sorry.
You're not interrupting me. We're having a conversation. So
okay. Well, you have a Post-it. You have a Post-it. So.
Well, the Post-it are here again as a methodology, right? to give me structure. That's all that they are. And I think what you said raises a lot of interesting points as to the merits of methodologies. I think, one, they're great as a selling tool, right? You have to sell something. Like innovation doesn't have, you can't feel it. It's not a Post-it note. You're not selling, we're going to use Post-it notes. You're not selling Post-it notes. You're not 3M. You have to sell a process. And so if you have a methodology, it's easier. And I see this with my clients, right? And your internal clients, or customers of ING or whatever. It's easier when you approach a prospective client and say, we have this methodology, right? Yeah. It's been invented by, some big fancy ass name.
Tried and
tested with hundreds of corporates, Fortune 500 companies.
Fortune 500. Yeah.
It has to be. I want to see someone. I actually wanted to do this with the School of Innovation. This is a side note. We just work with like Fortune 2000 and like downwards, or people who are not on the Fortune 500.
We work with
or
dodgy
Fortune
companies
at all.
You've never heard of.
Bring me your tired dodgy companies. Like. Exactly. Because I think those will be much more committed to actually running innovation processes and sticking it to the end. But like going back, right? It helps us sell. Methodologies help us sell because it's a thing that you can give someone and they understand it. The second thing you said, and I thought was interesting, is that it depends where you are on the innovation journey, your innovation, maturity. Thank you. Right? Curve. Right? There's a curve. And so if you're just starting out, and this is why, for example, design sprints have been so popular, I think, is, okay, first they help sell. Right? If you're a UX designer, now you can sell design sprints. So they help you sell. But
Mm.
when you have to work with clients for the first time and you're just getting into this, it helps to have that structure. You're going to be standing, like, I stood before a room full of 50, 100 top executives, and they're like waiting, and their time costs like thousands by the hour. And you're like there and you have to entertain them, right? You have to like give them some value. And you're like, okay, fuck, what do I do now? So having this structure in place, having this process in place, I think really helps. And the third thing I thought you said was very interesting, and it goes back to some of my architectural studies, is there was a famous architect by the name of Le Corbusier who said that he used the grid a lot in architectural design. He used to use a grid, right, when he was drawing the plans. And he said that the grid keeps you sane, like keeps you accountable, keeps you from being capricious, right? And so by having the process, that structure, it allows you to play between the lines of the grid. It frees you up. Once you're mature enough and you understand what rules you can break and which ones you might not want to break, then that structure gives you that freedom to do that. Okay? So I think that's very important. I think that's why I still stand behind my statement before that methodologies are bunch of crap, bullshit, because people focus on them too much. But I think what you said on the merits of methodologies is important, really important.
It's really, to me, it's a means to an end. And even the design sprint itself, and to be honest, I'm not even familiar with versions 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,000. But it drives to a very tangible outcome at the end of the sprint, right? You have a prototype, you have something that you can test with customers, which again you can then share with your stakeholders, like, hey, this is something that we came up with, this is what we designed. And I think that is the outcome. And if you then want to tweak that, if you realize, oh wait, actually this makes more sense for our environment, then go for it. In the end, it's about means to an end. And another thing that, in terms of the iterative process and embracing there's something else that's going to happen, what really helped me get through it was one person said one part and the other person said some other part, but they were like years apart. And only a few months ago I was like, oh, this is a thing. One guy said, a colleague of mine said, but we can only see as far as our headlights go. And later I found the second part to this, and I was like, well, you can only see as far as your headlights go, but you can still make it the whole way that way.
Oh, nice. Okay, well, I need to. Well, if I could make a banner out of that now, we need to write this down. Make a banner. That's a good line. I'm gonna use that. Thank you.
Because it feels like the uncertainty, right? Like you're driving in your car, it's foggy, it's dark, and you can only see as far as the headlights go. But you go and you go and you go, and you're like, okay, so now the road is like this, now the road is like that, and you learn as you go along where you should and where you shouldn't be going. And I feel that basically describes every innovation project ever. Like you will feel you're in this foggy environment, and every now and then it clears up, and you're like, oh, I have a vision. We're going there. Everything is sorted, and then you run another experiment, and you have more data, and it's like, well, actually, no, we have to just go, back to the road. Where's no fog? Where did the headlights take us?
Yeah, exactly. There's if you've played the video games, like Company of Heroes, or like where you invade Europe and fight the Nazis, there's always a map in the corner of the screen that has what's called fog of war, so you can only see like yourself and a small circle around you, but as you're moving forward, it starts to clear up, right? The fog of war like starts to disappear, and you expose more and more of the map. That. I think that complements your metaphor. Yeah. We're just all about metaphors here today. So So I want
Storytelling is a key element in being an innovator.
very true, very true. And so I wanna maybe kind of pause pause for a second and sum up by saying that methodologies they're great, right? They're tools, they're a means to an end, like you said, right? And it really depends where you are on the maturity curve as an innovation professional. If you're just starting out, don't worry about it. Stick to the methodology. Follow it like it's your religion. Okay? Just dive into it, follow it, trust the process.
Makes my work so much easier as well.
Exactly. Trust the process, right? Trust the process, see it through, run through the process 10, 50, 100 times. As you're doing this, though, always be self-aware to what's happening around you and start to experiment as to where you can break right from the process, or where can you come back, what can you change up, but and also use the methodology as a selling point. Like, don't be afraid of that. If you need collateral for a project that you're doing, feel free to use the methodology, as a selling point, as a product, or as a deliverable. I wanna touch on another thing that is interesting. I thought was interesting in what you said when you described pace, and I think also kind of supports what we're talking about in terms of methodologies and being able to break them up, is that, like, you described pace and I wrote down like the steps and I extracted the steps, right? And this is why I asked you. It's discovery, problem fit, solution fit, and scaling, right? So it's a 4-part
simplified
process.
Yes. Depending on who you ask, there might be more, but this is what it comes down to. Like, you have like little sub steps, but this is what it comes down to, with iterations potentially.
But that's the key. I think that's the key. The modularity of these methodologies, of these processes, is key, because this is a 4-part process. If I look at design thinking, right, again, it's another different fluffy names, but same like modules. Okay, empathy, define, brainstorm, prototype, and launch, or whatever, or right. And it sounds pretty much the same, right? It's like discovery is empathy or research, right? You got to do a bunch of research. Then they put like the talking to users under the research part, which is fine. Then define in design thinking. Okay, that might fit with your problem fit, right? Getting some traction, or defining the unique value proposition, or unique perspective. Solution fit is where you start to build, which is prototyping, and then scaling, which is just putting it out there, like launching. And if you look at design sprints, same thing. You look at lean startup. So what I want to say, or I guess, I don't know, bring up is, it doesn't matter if it's 4 parts or 5 parts or 6 parts or 7 parts, or he's going to kill me, but I don't care. I don't like him very much, but there's an Israeli guy who teaches, he heads the, no, okay, I'm not going to name names because that's like too dirty, but someone in Israel took the design thinking process, which is 5 steps, added 2 more steps, now it's 7 steps, wrote a book on it, and became an influencer in Israel for design sprints, for design thinking. Sorry. Okay, so I'm saying this to illustrate the point that, like, don't get caught up in the number of steps. They're all modular. They're all the same. There's kind of a meta process that brings all of them together, which is this research, define or traction, build, and launch. That's
Mhm.
I think pretty much it. That will describe 99 point or maybe 100%, I think, of innovation methodologies.
Mhm. Yeah. And so
What
I
do you
studied
think?
systems engineering. And basically,
Hmm.
at the time, innovation was not as hip yet as it is now. But basically, my whole degree was around make sure you spend about 80% of your time that you have on a project to understand what the problem is, understand who has a problem, and how big is this, and what do the stakeholders look like, and what has already been tried before that doesn't work. So it's really just map out the status quo, map out what's broken at the moment, and then spend the final 20%, well, I would say 15% on listing possible solutions, prioritizing them, and running tests, and then 5% on writing it up in a report that looks cool. But that was basically the assignment. Like, you want to analyze the system, you need to really understand what it's about. And I'm not sure whose quote this is. It was probably a very smart person. I would have to Google this. I'll Google this in a second. Was someone who said, "Yeah, if I have an hour to cut a tree, I will spend 50 minutes on sharpening my axe."
Yeah.
So it's really all about. So for me, a methodology, what I look for is how much time we're spending on fact finding, on understanding what it is that we're solving for, because it's so often that we're trying to solve a problem that's not there, that we've built something, or that we're partnering with someone, only to realize that, well, actually there's not really a need for this because there's no problem, or we've already solved it in a different way, or it doesn't have to be this expensive. But another thing why I do like having these methodologies is because they provide a shared language as well. And I think that's something to really not underestimate, how powerful that is. And also how fast that can actually create a gap between people. So, for example, and I think that's in every organization. Doesn't matter where you are. I was initially in the front office team, so really more client focused. And even there, we had our little language. We had our 3-letter acronyms, and you have your bubble with your colleagues. And at some point, I remember coming in, and I was like, Is this like secret code? Is this different language? I thought, Singapore, English-speaking country, but what happened? But it turned out to be all acronyms and all very specific to this sector. And within innovation, we're also really good at coming up with all kinds of very specific descriptions. So for me, the PACE methodology also provides this shared language that we have within ING. And we are still rolling it out. We're still making sure that everybody is included, everybody is trained, and that the same words mean the same things to everybody. For example, the first time I talked about experimentation with our I have a standing desk, and it was going to stand up by itself. The first time I spoke with our risk colleagues about experimentation, they were like, "Oh, whoa. This sounds risky." And I was like, well, actually, it's not. It's really about de-risking, actually. So having that shared language now, what I mean by experimentation is actually trying something very small. So it's not something that we need to do a whole big risk assessment for. And empathy and design thinking. What do we mean by that? Just and the language in terms of where we are in the process. If I now share with the senior manager, well, we're still in problem fit, they understand, okay, this is not something I can put in front of a client yet. This is still something that's being researched. This is still something that maybe someone might give me a ring to better understand what this actually looks like day to day. But it's just not something that I can now start selling. So that also, that sense of shared language, shared understanding of what we're trying to accomplish and also what it's not, is also really, really helpful. But again, being mindful that we don't create another island of language.
Yes. Yeah, which happens at a lot of organizations where the innovation folks become the weird people, the hipsters, the guys, the folks who dress differently and like spend all of their time in a room sticking post-its on the wall. And like I've had a couple of clients like that, where you walk in and there's like the classic war room, right? There's like a war room that only the innovation people use, no one from the business units gives a shit about that room. No one goes in there. It's like all covered with, boards with Post-its. And it was funny. I was consulting this one organization that had one of these, and their innovation team was so isolated from the rest of the organization. It was sad. It was really sad. It's like they've isolated themselves by using, like you said, the different language, right? They adopted their internal jargon, and so no one could come in and be part of what they were doing. And I remember this was like really symbolic of what was happening. We're having a conversation. I was having a conversation with the innovation team in one of the war rooms, and as we were talking, Post-its started falling from the walls because they've been up there for so long. The glue on the back started to dry out. And as we were talking, it was like autumn leaves that were like just falling from the boards as we were talking. And I was sitting there, I was thinking, oh, this is so symbolic. This is so symbolic.
Look
it's
what's
like
happening here.
Yes, look, it's all withering away. Yeah, there you go.
My painting is coming down.
That's karma.
I'm pretty sure it's the heat. Yeah. I'll just sit in front of it.
Or the heat. Block it with your head.
I'll just sit like this.
Yeah. So that's kind of look, we have, I think
this was not planned. For the people looking, this is not something we scheduled.
Not scheduled at all. I think most of
this is happening. No.
This was not planned. Not planned. It just happened. So we're talking about innovation methodologies. Oh, there it goes. It's completely coming off now. Awesome.
Yeah, I'm just trying to cover it up, but it's just
you cannot see it now.
What is going on? Well, anyway, you jinxed it. Well, there's just a square coming down.
I will take responsibility.
Behind me. Yeah.
It's okay. It's
masking
fine.
tape's not strong enough. It's actually an MVP. So there's an MVP situation that you see.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as the cactus doesn't fall, we should be okay. No, but this is actually an example of an MVP experiment. It is. It seems to be like, but yeah. So I wasn't sure if I actually want pictures up there. So I was like, I'll just put them on with masking tape first, then I can move them around. And minimum was viable. Well, up until now, and it sparked joy. But I think I need stronger tape. So yeah, experiment successful.
Yeah, successful. Yeah, implementation not so much.
We need to work on the tech feasibility of the implementation.
Yes. Yeah. Luckily, it's a problem that's easily solved. I think we have let's say about 5-10 more minutes. I think we can give folks a list of innovation methodologies that are out there that we think they should look at, and or talk about how you implement your innovation methodologies pace at ING. I think we can do both. We can try to do both. So like what are 2-3 innovation methodologies that you like and would recommend people look at or dive into?
Well, oh man, a whole list of books is now popping up in my head. I think Lean's, what I do recommend people to read Lean Startup, because it is all about making sure you build something small first, make sure you don't build something huge. So I really enjoyed reading that and understanding that one better. And then when it comes to books, or tools or methodologies, just the business model canvas in itself itself as a tool I find very powerful. There's also the business model generation book.
I have to say
Because what I
something
like about that
that.
is that it's okay. Oh, do you want to say something first before
No, I'm gonna
before
wait.
I
I'm gonna wait until you,
okay.
because you opened up a Pandora box now. But
Oh,
yeah,
well, I like it as a tool because it is you can really make it into a living doc. Well, you have to make it into a living document because it's again it's one of those tools where you can map out the status quo. You can map out what do we already know in terms of our customer we're trying to get value for. What do we know about our value proposition? What do we know about who we need to make this happen? Do we already have a sense of how we're going to make money from this? So you can quite
Mhm.
easily for a whole project or a whole business map out on one page where are we now? And as a coach, you can also really drill down on, okay, what do you actually know? And what are some of the answers that you still need? And then as you go along, you can continue to add and swap and see how you're actually going through your validations and making sure you actually make sure you have something that's desirable, that's feasible to build, and it's also viable in terms of making money or saving costs from it. Plus, you can explore multiple business models in parallel. So, yeah, I think that's just a really cool tool. It's not something that we have specifically within the base methodology as a thing in there, but we do use it with teams and projects where we feel, hey, this is now a helpful tool. So now I'm very curious, of course, to hear your thoughts on this.
And the business model canvas.
Business model canvas.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to do a whole episode on that because I've had so many thoughts about it, and I can talk about it for hours because it's kind of a case study for me in terms of innovation methodologies and where a tool has like gone completely viral and sort of took on a life of its own. Because if you think about all that we've been talking about so far, it's about, and this is what I believe, innovation methodologies as Lego pieces, as components that you can mix and match, right? And so I have the highest respect for Alex and Eves and Strategizer and all of that. But I think a lot of their success is due to great marketing. Okay. Because at the end of the day, they didn't invent the business models. Business models were always there. It's a whole field, and there are a lot of people doing research on what business models are. The canvas is just one visualization, permutation of a business, of what a business model looks like or behaves like, right? It's just, okay, like the first question I ask myself is like, why are there, I don't know, 9 squares, or I don't remember how many, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 9 squares, doesn't matter. But why are there X number of squares? Why isn't there like a square at the top, right, that doesn't disturb the visual sexiness, the beautification of the diagram, that says context or ecosystem, right? Like if you're building a new business model or improving an existing one, it doesn't exist in a void. It's not like just out there in space. So your boxes are floating in space. And what I've observed and experienced was that people love the business model canvas because, one, it's super easy to understand and work with, and it gives you immediate satisfaction and gratification. It's like, boom, right? I take this thing, I extract one business model that's like the classic Airbnb example. I do the Airbnb, I understand it, and now I'm able to, right, kind of do my own thing. So the leveling up is very quick. It's like an addictive video game, if we're talking about games before. But then I've been to too many war rooms and corporations and organizations where that thing stays on the wall for ages. Like people don't understand how to take that and translate it into something real, right? Into an actual product or service, whatever. And so, like, I think if we were talking about the other methodologies where you start from research, where on this diagram does your research go? Like, where your business model needs to exist in a specific ecosystem or context. So why not put another box there? And so if you're already putting another box, why not take off a box? Why not add 2 more boxes? What I'm saying, and I'm ranting, sorry, but because this is something that's,
Get it off your chest. It's okay. Safe space.
it's close to my heart. It's close to my heart. It's like it's a tool that's gone out of control, and almost every client I go to is like, let's do business canvas first. Let's just do that first, and then that's where it stops. And so I think as a tool, it's great. It's one way of visualizing your business model, but don't like fall in love with it. Don't obsess over it. Like, you can add boxes, you can remove boxes, whatever makes sense for you. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Fall in love with the problem you're trying to solve, not with the canvases that you're using. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And I think, like, part of it is, Strategizer has built a whole business around it, which is great. But I think, the fact that the tool is so popular doesn't give the inventors of the tool immediate credibility. And I think that's right for a lot of other people in the innovation space now, where as a podcast host and owner, I've gotten so many requests from people who just have written crappy books about innovation and want a spot on the podcast to just kind of build their own business. And I think that that's something that as a community we should be, we should be mindful of. Yeah,
it's about solving problems and finding tools that help you move forward in that.
Yes, we need to wrap up, because
quick one before we wrap up. If you indeed want a box for around the box, I have an ecosystem map canvas, which is actually making the business model canvas very small in the middle, and then it has like all these macroeconomic factors that you can actually map out, competition, everything. So if you're interested,
there you go.
I can share that with you.
Okay, so I'm gonna put on the link again. Sign up, and we'll send you this ecosystem map that Suzanne just mentioned, because this is awesome. But that's like your fix to the business model canvas, which is awesome as well.
It's again means to an end, right? If you indeed, it is indeed, innovation does not happen in isolation. Building a business does not happen in isolation. So if indeed, if you see a team that's really only narrowed into a very specific thing, like, yes, it's important to focus. Yes, it's important to understand who are we trying to solve the problem for, but it never happens in isolation. You also need other people, what you were just sharing also in the Innovation Lab, right? You need to make sure you have the support of the organization, because what is otherwise the point of having an Innovation Lab in an organization? It needs to be able to leverage the power and the assets and the knowledge and the network of the standing organization. Otherwise, it could just be a random garage somewhere with people in hoodies and Post-its falling off the wall.
And Post-it. Yes, exactly.
Or posters, in my case.
Yes. So I think we're going to wrap up with that. I think that's a powerful message to wrap up with. And that's it. The link is up. The link is up. I'm looking for a microphone. Like, I've got this microphone, but I cannot drop it. Yeah. So we need a mic. We need a prop mic that we can drop. This is okay. Go for it. Drop a pen. That's it. Really, we're done. No, it had.
But
it had a good effect.
Wait. I have a better idea.
There you go. The face accompanied the dropping was.
Yeah. Okay.
It was powerful.
I'm not gonna do it again, but that was my way of wrapping this up.
Thanks so much, Suzanne. And folks, we're going to be here next Thursday as well for more open office office hours. Yeah, office hours. Post your questions. We're going to put links to next week's office hours on social media. So add your questions or comments or things that you want us to talk about. And we'll just ignore that completely and just talk about our own bullshit. But no, seriously. Yes, exactly. Like that. All right. So we'll see you next week.
Ta-ta.
Bye.